So Demon Slayer episode 3 has arrived, and out of the 3 episodes that we've watched for this series, this was definitely my favorite episode. And best of all, coming into this week's episode, I learned that this will be a 26 episode season. So no one core treatment and then wait and hope for more. No, we are getting at least 26 episodes with this first season. And if the quality can keep up with what we're seeing with even just the still frames, with how crisp and beautiful they look, that will make me very happy. And if I'm not mistaken, before episode 1 aired, I think they had a good handful of these episodes finished, so I think the production crunch won't be too hectic and will ruin the quality down the line. I think we'll have a pretty polished series beginning to end. And this episode was just really impressive to me because I figured that the training arc, it wouldn't last forever, but I was expecting maybe 2 or 3 episodes. I wasn't expecting 2 years in literally 1 episode, but I have to say, for how much time they covered, I actually thought they did a good job. Training arcs in general, they aren't really my thing. Like, I would say 50% of the time I like them, and then 50% of the time I think they're disposable. So really, it's kind of a coin toss of what I'll feel about it. But I thought not dragging it out, but really just making it snappy. So I thought training for 1 year with a mentor who basically makes him look like a bitch, he's just smacking him around, I thought was a good way to really highlight that he doesn't belong in this training course, but he has the determination and will to improve himself for his sister to get better. And I thought the idea of making this training almost more comedic than serious was actually the right direction to go with this, because having that shonen comedy of him just getting slapped around either by his mentor or just the obstacles that are kind of coming his way, you don't really want it to be a serious situation because he's not in a life or death situation. He really is a beginner getting whooped by a master. So I thought actually having it be more comedic with its directing was actually the proper way to go. It was funny, it just, the shonen style of comedy works so beautifully for a situation like this. It didn't feel off-putting, it just naturally clicked with how he would get slapped around. You'd think, okay, we're building up to a serious and awesome moment, and then just ridiculous shonen comedy, which shonen comedy isn't always the best thing out there, but right now Demon Slayer is really making it work for its very dark and gritty series, mixed in with the more lighthearted nature. Then 6 months having him basically train alone, trying to slice through a rock, which you kind of think, how the hell can you do that? And in any other series you normally couldn't, unless you were in JoJo and you also have basically a Hammond power system where breathing makes you pretty much as strong as a demon without the negative side effects of wanting to eat on flesh and maybe even your own companions. So it was nice to see how you get a year with one man, 6 months by himself, to then 6 months going up against pretty much like children of the forest, spirits that are basically training him to visualize a target rather than thinking, how do I slice through a rock? Well, you build up your stamina, you build up your essentially hum and your breathing techniques, and then when you can finally slice through that mask, you actually have sliced through the rock, which I actually thought was pretty cool. I actually thought they were normal people, and then when they are kind of revealed to be almost like spirits of the forest, and how he didn't actually slice through the mask, but he sliced through the rock, it was such a nice way to tie up his training, and 2 years flew by. Literally 20 minutes for us, but 2 years for him, and it didn't feel that jarring, which typically if you were to try to cover 2 years and make it feel right, it probably would feel very off-putting, because how do you naturally go from a beginner rookie who really can't even fight and hold a sword to someone who can literally use breathing techniques to slice through a rock? Well, we see the actual execution. Have it be a little more silly and basic, simple run down a mountain, swing a sword 1,000 times in a row till your arms are ready to fall off. Simple moments like that make it cute and comfy and just overall fun to make us understand how his body was getting stronger and more fit to be able to do some ridiculous things. To then him just literally training by himself, increasing his breathing, increasing his swordplay. Simple things so we can understand that he did this for a year and a half. We don't need to see a year and a half. We just need to see what was he doing for this long period of time to get him to the point that he could literally slice through a rock. We know that they have like this ability of breathing to essentially become as strong as demons, so we can see what he was doing to his body to increase his lung capacity to the point that he could literally be as strong as a demon. That's what I love about this episode, is they didn't drag anything out. When they slowed it down to show us something, it made sense for what they were doing. It was to show us like, this is what he's going to be doing for a long period of time, understand what's happening here, understand his training routine, to then obviously we're going to skip a few months into the future and rinse and repeat. It was a very effective method. It didn't drag out the training arc. I'm sure some people who love training arcs are going to say, I wish it was a bit longer, but he was only doing so much. He was really just increasing his body strength. He wasn't going up against a bunch of samurais or anything. So it really would have been boring if it was any longer than it was. And I've heard that they've actually extended it from the manga, with the manga was actually a lot shorter from what I was told. So I think this was the proper pacing, and I thought just the 3D camera work is so good with Ufotable. Like, it's kind of like, you know, water is wet, everyone knows it, but I love how the action in this show works. You'll essentially have this speed and momentum where it feels like you are going 100 miles per hour, you're just following a character bouncing off trees, and it just looks so great the way they blend the 2D and 3D imagery. Ufotable is second to none. They really are the best at their game when it comes to 3D camera work and just how they blend things together. I thought for as quick as this fight was, even though it was kind of a slaughter against one person who really didn't stand a chance, at least at the beginning, it was just so great to see how beautifully executed and detailed that action sequence was, and it just makes me just drooling to see where some of the future fights are going to go, because when Tanjiro actually fights an opponent who can hold his own against him, it's not going to be a one and done swing to call it a day. Imagine what the action is going to look like. It's not going to be a one trick pony, it's going to be that camera work bouncing around, the speed, the momentum, the power, slicing through things like rocks and building. It is going to be ridiculous when we see some of these brutal and intense fights down the road. I don't even know what they're going to look like, but based on what Ufotable has been teasing us up till now, can't wait to see some real fights. Not training fights or things like that, real life or death fights where Tanjiro can actually put up a fight for his own. And we even get some pretty interesting information. It seems that his sister really doesn't need to eat. I mean, she's been knocked out for 6 months here, and obviously her body doesn't function the same way a human does. The fact that she's still alive and hasn't eaten for 6 months, clearly there's some interesting things at play with the demon mechanics, which I'm dying to see more of. It's actually pretty heartbreaking to see how he's just so worried that one of these days he's going to go into her room and see that she's not there anymore, and it's pretty tragic. And I thought with how almost positive this episode was, sure, it had some more brutal training techniques, but it had a lot of shonen comedy. That real and really human and family moment I thought was really touching near the beginning of the episode. But the episode did actually kick off with a lot of exposition that I'm not really sure the purpose of, because it kind of felt like common sense, but I definitely think the imagery and just how well the art was detailed, it actually kind of tied it together, because you're basically hearing like humans, if they lose a limb, they can't regrow it. Demons are super powerful. If they get cut, they're gonna heal. It's all stuff we've already essentially seen in the show, so I'm not really sure why they showed us this exposition, but I have to say the art was gorgeous. I love the shift in style. It was just like, even though I thought the information was kind of useless, I loved looking at this exposition scene because I was like, these screen caps are just awesome, they're beautiful, and honestly, I'm not even that mad that we're getting pretty much useless information for what we've already seen within episodes 1 and 2. I'm super excited though, like I'm glad we're not dragging shit out, I'm glad it's not going the route of making it be like, okay, you know, we got 26 episodes, they easily could have dragged out this training sequence even if it was quick in the manga, but instead we're just getting to where it's important. Most people want to see Tanjiro as someone who can actually put up a fight and protect his sister, and then have the remainder of the story be a slower pace so we can actually see characterization and development and further improvements on his body and powers. But we need to get him to a spot where he can at least attack a demon and not fumble his way out of a situation, who can actually slice through someone who's trying to kill him. So to get him within episode 4, like episode 4 is going to kick off and he's actually going to be a decent warrior, obviously not the best in the world, but someone who can at least protect his sister, make sure she doesn't go on a rampage, attack demons, things like that. I'm happy. They're not beating around the bush. It was fast pacing, but I think the fast pacing actually was a good thing here because they're not dragging things out. They're making sure that we get our character to a point that everyone wants to see quickly enough while also showing how he got there. 2 years going by in a matter of 20 minutes typically would be something I'd criticize, being like, that's too much content, but all he was doing was essentially improving his body. We didn't need to see time and time again of him running up and down a mountain or dodging logs or knives, things like that. Just get him to the point where he can slice through that rock so we can then transition to the next chapter in his life. There's setup for his sister, why she's knocked out, what's going to happen when she does wake up, how hungry is she going to be, what's going on with the demons, what's going on with basically a Haman technique of breathing, and how far can they really push themselves to be as strong as demons, because we're hearing about water techniques, are there fire techniques, like what all are they going to do with this power system? I'm super curious and excited to see more. The visuals are not letting up, the still shots, just the overall art style is so beautiful, it's so different from pretty much even anime that Ufotable has done. It really feels distinct and unique to make this feel like a unique Demon Slayer world. The 3D camera work is stunning, the even like when they aren't moving too much and they're doing kind of typical anime techniques of here's a still frame, we're going to pan around, it just looks so good you're not even mad when nothing's actually moving on screen. Yuki Kadra with the OST is simply phenomenal, but that's kind of common sense, similar to Water being wet with Ufotable being able to use 3D camera work well. The OST is obviously going to be amazing. It really builds that kind of like almost samurai kind of demon slayer atmosphere that you're hoping for. So even when we are just watching this man swing a sword for 1,000 times, the music just really gets you invested in this kind of training montage, and I just love how the blending of comedy and serious and more darker content was handled in this episode. Episode 2 had a hit or a miss with the blend, but this episode just felt perfect. Like, they really got the style down to a T, which would obviously make sense, especially for a series that was starting off and then it kind of got its groove going. And I'm glad it kind of found its groove earlier into the series rather than later, so the remaining 23 episodes should be an absolute treat, and I can't wait to see where they really want to go with this series, because this episode I definitely think was the best out of all three. It had action that was really fun to watch, it had character moments between the brother and the sister, also kind of explaining the whole demon hunters and kind of what they're doing, even though the exposition wasn't that complex and kind of said some common sense like humans can lose arms and not regain it, it still gave you enough information that you're learning about the world and the characters and how it functions, and seeing this breathing technique, it looks awesome, and I really hope they go all out with the visuals when they really do detail some of the crazier things they obviously want to do with this. I can definitely understand why this is a lot of people's favorite anime of the season. It has a little bit of everything that I think anime fans like, whether you're in it for the silly moments, the more serious moments, the just if you're watching for the action because it's Ufotable, which a lot of people do, but I actually think there's care into the character writing. I just can't wait to see how far this brother and sister relationship really wants to go, because I think they have a lot of possibilities, and it'll be interesting to see if Nezuko can actually be more and more human without having to fully revert back to her human self, because she obviously still recognizes it's her brother, but what's going to happen? Like, is she going to have to revert to being a human to even be able to talk to him? Like, where is it going to go? And she gonna have to wear that kind of like muzzle forever? It's really interesting to see. I think there's so many possibilities that this series can go, and to know that episode 4 is going to kick off 2 years from where we were starting the episode off at, where he can actually swing a sword, do some pretty basic but pretty badass breathing techniques to be able to fight demons. This isn't going to be a pushover kid who doesn't know what he's doing anymore. He's at least going to be a beginner who can fight a demon, and that's exciting, knowing that we don't have to reach episode 8 to get to this point, but we can kick into episode 4 and already have a pretty decent fighter for our main character. Let me know what everyone thought of this week's episode of Demon Slayer down in the comment section below. Do you love it? Do you hate? Your favorite moment? Where do you think it's going to go next week? Let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.